started in Comedy Castle in 2022.
Yeah, in Detroit, Michigan. Sorry,
2022
let me
and
close.
2002.
Let me close the window real quick. I could hear a police car coming, and I was like, "Yeah, dude, they're coming." Hopefully, I don't get arrested in the middle of this interview. That'd be great.
Yeah. And is it cold out there?
Yeah, man, it's especially to an Indian from India. It's freezing out here.
No, since I had a Edinburgh trip planned in September, but I think my visa didn't get approved. It's very difficult for Indians to travel anywhere.
Really? That's
Yeah.
surprising to me. That's slightly surprising to me because there are so many Indians everywhere.
Yeah, they are, but they have like settled way back. Like as a
Oh yeah.
tourist, it's very
Okay.
difficult.
Gotcha. I hear you.
Ah,
Yeah, you were asking me about where my comedy career began. I began in 2002 in Detroit, Michigan. And I was at the Comedy Castle. That was the Comedy Castle is actually it's the oldest club run by the same owner in the United States. So Mark Ridley has run that comedy club since the 1970s, and it's the same guy. So all these other comedy clubs, and he was only, I think, the third comedy club that opened in the United States between New York and LA. I mean, it was basically the Ice House, the Improv, I think Zany's, and then Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle. So maybe not the third, maybe he was the fourth, but he's been open the entire time. So it was a great place to start comedy.
and did you remember your first open mic, the first show that you did? How was that show?
Yeah,
Did you bomb? Did you kill her? Or was it 50-50?
you know what? That's a great joke. That's a great question, Kishan. I I remember it very well. I had been doing improv for 2 years before I did stand up, and I had two uncles. I grew up with two uncles who were stand up comedians,
Ah,
so I like knew a lot about stand up before I got into it, and I wanted to do it since I was a little kid. And it was just very funny because like I had adults would ask you, what do you want to do when you grow up? And kids are normally like, I want to be an astronaut or I want to be a fireman. And I was like, I want to be a stand-up comedian, which just made no sense to adults were like, what? Get a load of this kid. Anyway, um, I I did this I did a stand-up comedy class actually that was taught by this woman named Gilda Hauser, who's really funny and is a great stand-up instructor. She's a very good stand-up coach. And I did this show, the graduation show that we had for the class, and I killed. I was the first guy out. I took the bullet, and I crushed. I crushed like so hard that it was like it actually was like a problem because every time I did stand up after that, I did open mics after that show. I was like, what happened? Like I lost the magic. Like it was like the graduation show was so powerful because all the people are there to see their friends, and watch their friends like, go through like graduating. And so like I then went from that to like open mics, which are just like where comedy goes to die sometimes. So it was like so weird. It took me a long time to get back to like I think I'm just chasing that first high. You know what I mean? Like I'm just like I'm a heroin addict just going after the first high as much as I can get again.
you like went so high in your first time that the only way you could go was down, and that's what
Yeah,
happened with the rest of the
basically.
open
Yeah.
mics.
Yeah, it was a huge step down like right after the first one.
Okay, so let's not talk about that special moment. Let's get to your like comedy clubs things. So when was the first time you got your first laugh in a comedy club?
Yeah, it actually was my first, I think it was my first joke out on stage at the Comedy Castle. The first joke so I looked, do you remember the movie The Sixth Sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, the movie The Sixth Sense had not been out that long
Okay.
before I did stand-up comedy. And I looked, at the time, I looked kind of like Haley Joel Osment, like the actor. And so the first thing I said when I walked out on stage is I grabbed the mic and I said, "Hey, just in case you're wondering, I don't see dead people." And that was like the line of the movie, and it crushed like because I looked like the guy, and then I was the first comedian out. It just worked super well, and I remember being in front of the audience thinking like, "Oh my god, I'm in it, I did it." Like once you get the first laugh out of the way, it
Yeah.
feels like you're okay. Now I'm in it.
And was it your icebreaker? Was that joke your icebreaker on the stage?
That was my icebreaker. Yeah,
That would
that
have
was the
been
one.
that would have been brilliant.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And this is not your first time at the Fringe. You debuted in Fringe in 2017, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, I did. This is my fifth Fringe. But 9 years ago, I did my first Fringe. In 2017, I did two shows similar to what I'm doing this year. It was one of them was Chicago's Comedy Showcase, which was just a
Okay.
bunch of Chicago comedians that came out to do the Fringe, which is cool. And then I did a solo show called Prophet of Doom, and it was basically PR prophet, like a prophesizing
Yeah.
prophet of doom. And it
Ah,
was basically me just talking about how I thought. I mean, it was a straight stand-up comedy show, but it was like me just talking about how I thought things were going to get a lot worse. I was like, Trump is president, everything is falling apart, and like all that's now come to pass. So
and it was the first year of Trump as a president. I guess the second year, 2016, he got elected, and 2017.
yeah. 2017, it was his first year being president, and like here we are, 9 years later, still dealing with the guy.
And how was the response that time?
It was pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good. Um, it was a, it was, your first Fringe is really hard because you're not used to it. It's strange to come to Scotland in August because it's like the weather is like it is anywhere else in October. Like it's like not, it's so cold and rainy all the time, and you're constantly flyering. You have to constantly walk around flyering people to try to come out to your show. So it's exhausting. And then you get audiences who don't understand your references, and like you're used to, I was at the time used to American audiences, specifically Midwest audiences. So, like the British don't laugh at Americans laugh at almost anything.
Yeah.
Like, and we're very enthusiastic people, and we like it when somebody has an interesting take or like an interesting angle, or we want to hear someone's opinion on something. Like, I think that's what Americans think comedy is they think like, oh yeah, this guy's got a lot of interesting thoughts on whatever the subject is. The British don't care about any of that. they don't they don't want to hear you. They don't want to hear your opinion. They just want the joke. Like, just give me the joke, and they want to hear you like say the thing in a funny way. That's what they like. They like wordplay, they like puns, they like punchlines. And so it was really exhausting that first Fringe because audiences were so I was so not used to audiences. And they weren't used to me. Like I didn't know what I was doing. So in terms of, I mean, I've been doing stand up a long time, but I hadn't done it in front of a British audience really before. So that was a challenge.
And this explains the title of your this year Fringe show, that an American comedy show that quite possibly might be funny to the British.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I wanted to do a British style. I wanted to do a show with a lot of British style jokes. And so I wrote this show with a very close friend of mine, Adele Cliff, who's very funny and has won. She's either been a finalist for or won Best Joke of the Fringe like many
Ah,
years. And yeah, she's a joke writer for the BBC. She's really funny. And so I would write all this material and then I would write all these jokes. And then I would sit down with her and she'd be like, yeah, these aren't really jokes. Like these aren't really jokes in the way that British people think about jokes. And then we would go back and forth and like she'd help me kind of work through them. So really, I mean, it was a real attempt by me to try to figure out how to do British style joke writing. We will see if audiences feel the same.
yeah. And I think it depends. I think the reason is how British grew up with comedy and how Americans grew up with comedy. When you talk about British comedy, you think about deadpan shows like Monty Python and Blackadder and stuff like that. And for Americans, I guess it was mostly sitcoms that introduced the comic
Yeah.
sense there, Taxi, and then Cheers and MASH and everything.
Yeah, there's a different, and the stand-up comedians are different too, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because stand-up comedy and the way that Americans, first of all, I should say the way that people think about it generally, um, that is, this is a person standing up in front of you and just telling jokes or like funny stories. I mean, like every culture has had storytellers and joke tellers, but in the way that stand-up comedy came to be as we understand it today, it came out of jazz clubs in New York in the 1940s and into the 50s. And that came from guys like Lenny Bruce who would get up in between jazz acts. Like the crowd came to see music, but jazz musicians need to take a break and they can play for a while, but they need to go take a break and chill out and then get back on stage and they'll do a second set. Well, people were leaving the clubs, right? So they needed somebody to come up and just keep people in their seats for a while. So they used to get, these comedians who would come in and do it and they would tell jokes. And those jokes became like, I'm just, I'm tossing different bits at you. I'm telling stories, like whatever that happens to be. And so like that's a very American way of perceiving jokes. But in the UK and in Europe, there's kind of been a different system here. Like comedians came up through like a kind of vaudeville storyteller act over in the UK that just had a different trajectory. So so the sense of humor is actually different. Like in the United States, we have influences like Richard Pryor, George Carlin, Lenny Bruce, all throughout that like that era of comedians. Over here, just a completely different set of comedians who were closer to working with the BBC and
Yeah.
working with different state-run media. That just didn't happen in the United States. So it is interesting because there really is a different like tradition of humor that is rooted in both countries.
And I think when you talk about Lenny Bruce and George Carlin, so people were like in US, people were habituated to listening to rich ideas from the comedians.
Yeah.
And in UK, it was just about jokes, how to be funny, how you're bringing the
Yes.
punchlines.
Yeah, I think this is exactly true. I think it's like it's a different because comedians in the United States, I mean, humor has always been such a part of the fabric of British life. So, and what helped inform this show of mine is that like my family is British. Like I'm American. I sound so American, but my grandmother is from Edinburgh. She's actually from
Okay.
here and I have a lot of cousins who live in England and who live in Scotland. A lot of cousins and aunts and uncles and all kinds of relatives, and they're wonderful people, right? But I grew up in a family that had like a British style humor influence, but I was in the United States, so it's like I grew up kind of with like both senses of humor a little bit, and and could kind of see and understand the difference. Like a major difference, and this is Stephen Fry is the one who pointed this out, but it's
Yeah.
interesting to think about, is that in American comedy, the comedian is above the audience. Like the comedian sees things the audience doesn't see. So that is where we get a sense of like George Carlin, I mean Lenny Bruce, Richard Pryor, like all these guys are taking something that they see that you don't see and they're bringing it to you and describing it to you so you can see it from their perspective. And a lot of people find that like really funny. Michael Che these days is a great example of that. Che is like a fantastic joke writer, and he's
Mhm.
really good. Like his classic joke where he's like, everybody wants to shit on Black Lives
Excuse
Matter.
me,
They're
I'm
like,
so sorry. I'm so sorry. Can you like turn off your video and turn it on again? It's gone.
oh, so sorry.
Yeah, it's
Can
fine.
you hear me?
I
Okay,
can hear
let
you,
me
but
pop
the
it back.
video is gone. Yeah. So you were talking
Is
about
that
Michael
better?
Shea being above the audience and all.
Yeah, like Che's a good example of this because Michael Che will write jokes that are like he has this great joke um where he's talking about Black Lives Matter and he's like people will say he's like can't we just why can't we just say Black Lives Matter and people come back with all lives matter. And he's like why can't we just say Black Lives Matter? And he goes that same crowd will say like never forget 9/11. And then he goes all buildings matter. Like it's it's so funny because you're like, yeah, dude, like he's able to take that and then put it into like this other perspective, right? it's not that a British comedian wouldn't write that joke. Like I think Daniel Sloss has a lot of jokes that are kind of like that.
Yeah.
But like a British comedian more so comes from the perspective that the audience is above them, right? So like the audience sees something the comedian doesn't see. The comedian is the butt of the joke. The comedian is an idiot or like a like a someone in the way Stephen Fry said it is the way that life shits on this person from an incredible height and they can't, despite themselves, they cannot seem to change it. They are horribly inept at doing anything in their lives, even though they think they might be good at it or they might want to do it. And that's the joke. So that American audiences just hate that. Like we just do not like that. We want to believe. We're so enthusiastic. Like I've been getting a lot of laughs walking around the Fringe by introducing myself to people. Like, and I'll go, "Hey, I'm Brendon. I'm American, so please forgive the enthusiasm." And people they find it so funny because they're like, "Yeah, dude. Like we're just so Americans are just so excited all the time. We have to believe it's possible." Like we can't watch a movie about a guy who's like, I'm gonna overcome my weaknesses, and you know from the beginning he's not gonna do it. Like we're like, no, we have to, we have nothing else. Please let us believe in something. Like that's American culture.
And you talked about Sloss. So I would say that Sloss kind of does it in American way now, but Acaster is still like very British when you talk about comedy. And then you talk about like when you take an example of Ricky Gervais. So Ricky Gervais is also an American now because he says that he's putting him in a way that he's not smarter than the audience, but he does seem smarter when he's on stage.
Yeah, another good example in an American context of the reverse is Norm Macdonald. So it's
Oh, he's
funny because Norm is Canadian, and
hmm,
Canadians Canadians are interesting because they're very influenced by British culture, but they can speak sort of in an American vernacular and an American comedy vocabulary because they grew up with both influences. And so Norm is really interesting because he's constantly making jokes where he's like, we know because we know Norm that he's not
yeah,
stupid, but
yeah.
he's making jokes that make him sound stupid all of the time. And he said it before. He's like, there's nothing worse than a comedian in front of an audience trying to like be impressive or like be interesting to them, which is terrible
And
because that's why I'm not famous. I've done that my entire comedy career. I've tried to get up in front of audiences and impress them, and I'm horribly inept at it. I am the guy that life shits on from a great height because I can't seem to get out of my own circumstance.
But the interview you're talking about of Norm, where he like kind of butchered Bill Maher and saying that he told Larry King straight away that your friend Bill Maher always puts himself above the audience. But
Yes.
but when you talk about yourself, I don't think you put yourself above the audience. I think your main purpose is to get the laugh.
Yes.
But do you think that when you hold the mic, there is this sense of power you get that I'm the only person who can speak in the room right now?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a strange comedy's weird, right? Because the audience is the ultimate. So the audience is the ultimate judge, right? It's like whether or not comedy's happening depends on whether or not someone is laughing. Like so the
Yeah.
audience has all the power, and the entire dance is for the comedian to continue to try to convince the audience that the comedian has the power, not the audience. When in reality they do the entire time. Like if they knew that, if they know that, if they get a sense of that, like if they get a sense that like the comedian needs something from them, it just kills the vibe so quickly. Like they can't. It is ultimately. Colin Quinn once said it's the most justice in an art form, which I think is true because you need the audience and you have to. There's only one way to get them, and that's by leading with their consent. Like they came into the show to buy the ticket, they sat down to watch you. Like they're consenting to you leading them, but every time, every joke, you have to continue to earn their trust. Like you can't totally, no one gets up. If you're not getting laughs, it's slam poetry. Like you're not doing comedy. So I really think, yeah, it is a totally just art form. And there is a weird power dynamic, right? Because you have a microphone and they don't.
Yeah. But talking about audience having a microphone, you are doing crowd work, and that's a 40-minute show, ADHD.
Yeah, yep.
So can you tell us a bit about that show?
Yeah, that show's insane. That show is high energy. It's something different every day. I've done stand-up comedy for 25 years. I've done improv since I was 14 years old. So at this point it's 26 years. Um, I've done clown for the last few years. So there's a lot of tools that I have in the toolbox. And I just thought it would be really fun to just jump out of an airplane and assemble the parachute on the way down. You know, I I love being in front of an audience. And a lot of times the most energy that comes from a comedy show, like comedy's interesting, right? Because if you're doing stand up, you have a set list and you have things that you want to say, and you hopefully have a thesis, like you have an idea that you're trying to get across. I mean, sometimes it's just for fun, like we're just up and we're making dick jokes and it doesn't matter, and there's no purpose to any of it, which is great, and comedy like that is super fun and can exist. But like sometimes you have something you want to say. Like I had something I wanted to say with an American comedy show that quite possibly might be funny to the British. But sometimes it's just fun to get up and just go nuts. Like a lot of the energy that comes, the most energy that comes from a comedy show comes from the audience interaction part. And sometimes Whitney Cummings would say conversation, comedy's always a conversation with the audience, but sometimes that conversation is explicit, meaning like you're just directly talking to them. And that's the kind of show that I wanted to do with ADHD. Like I wanted a high energy show, but it could be any given night. It could be 20 minutes. It could be 40 minutes. Like it's like whenever we run out of juice, basically.
Ah,
And but certainly I don't think an audience could take that for more than like 30 minutes. So I thought, you know what, we're gonna keep it real short. Like takes 5 minutes to get in. We'll start the show. I'll lose my mind. The audience will be like, what is happening? They'll get some laughs, and then we'll wind it up pretty quickly. That was kind
but
of the idea.
British people have grown up on very different kind of crowd work than American. When you talk about comedians recently, you think about Jimmy Carr doing
Oh yeah.
crowd work, and he's a great staller and he has great comebacks. So what's your plan handling the British audience?
Yeah, well, the plan is to assemble the parachute on the way down. So I don't have a bunch of loaded comebacks. I mean, doing clown a lot in New York and in Paris has, I think, helped with this a little bit. Talking with the audience, maybe, I mean, I could imagine one night. I mean, when I've done this type of crowd work show before, I can imagine a conversation with an audience member talking about what they do for a living spins off to me doing a rant, and then I play two characters having a conversation, and then that might even go somewhere depending on what something else somebody said. Like maybe earlier that night, I polled three audience members what they did for work, and then that transitions into now we're into this other guy's workplace. Maybe I ask one of them to come on stage, which almost never happens, and the British are going to freak out if they hear that. But there's a number of different ways that it can go depending on what the vibe in the room is, and it's kind of just up to, honestly, it is up to the audience as much as it is to me what they want to bring to the show. And I know that that's going to be the funny thing is, like, I can already feel British people like cringing at this like
Yeah.
concept, because they're like, oh no, 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 I would, no, no, of course not, I would. They just want to sit there and have the comedy come at them, which is fine, but like I think that they want to be, it is a conversation, and I think that they want to have a show that's relevant to them, and the best way to do that is by pulling them and things out of them into the show.
I think basically it's not. I won't describe it as a crowd work. I would say that you're like doing improv with the topics you get from the crowd, because it's not just
A
a
little
stand-up
bit,
act.
but
It's not a
sometimes I'm
fully
talking to them. Yeah, but
uh-huh.
sometimes I'm also talking to them. So crowd work comedy show. I mean, yeah, crowd work is a big word, but yeah, I think you're right. There's a bit of improv and some clown that come out of it too.
And now talking about your solo show, an American comedy show that quite possibly be funny enough to the British. So we already had this discussion that in 2017 you had this observation that how British people has a very different sense of humor than the US. So what
Yeah.
was that the time you thought about a show like this?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this show for 9 years. I just thought I just thought it would be great to. So I mean, I should just admit, Kishan, I don't think I'm a very good joke writer. I think I'm a good performer. I think I'm a good comedian in the sense that I think I know how to connect with an audience, and I think that I know how to be in front of an audience. I've had many years of being on stage, but I just am not. My brain just doesn't work the way that like a lot of stand-up comedian joke writers' brains work. Actually, it's funny. Some years ago, a friend of mine who I'd not seen in many years, through he's a comedian also, came to see me in New York, and we went out and were doing comedy. And he turned to me after I got off stage, and he goes, you've really changed. You're no longer trying to look like a smart guy in front of the audience. You're just trying to make them laugh." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I finally like figured it out." But I think that like I was bringing something to the equation that was not great at joke writing. So anyway, the reason I say that is because the British respect joke writing. And I just wanted to challenge myself to figure out how I can make them laugh. And sincerely, not for nothing, I want to get really good reviews because I, quite frankly, would love to get a visa and leave the United States right now.
And what elements can we expect in the show? You mentioned clowning, you mentioned that there could be a dance number, there could be playing characters. So what elements could we expect in your solo show?
Yeah, the solo show is just straight stand up comedy. Like the American comedy show that quite possibly might be funny, the British, is just straight stand up. It's just jokes. It's I mean it's basically that. It's just jokes and fun, and I'm I'm talking a little bit about my British family. I'm talking a little bit about what it's like to grow up in America, about the Midwest where I'm from, which is like a kind of a very different. It's got a unique culture. It's a little bit like the Midlands in the UK, like a lot of alcoholism, and and then I talk about Trump and America and like all this stuff for today. So the way that I've been pitching it to people here is, listen, if you really want to go to a show in which somebody makes fun of the United States for an hour, like this is that show. Like this is a really good one.
But you are doing clowning and everything in your crowd work act. Like
Correct.
there
Yeah,
are
and the
chances for
ADHD
that.
show.
So I wanted to know that
Yeah.
when did you learn all these elements, clowning and dance numbers and playing characters and sketch comedy? So when did you learn all this?
Yeah, so when I was 14 years old, I started doing improv back in high school in Detroit, and I did sketch comedy and improv for probably like 14 years. So I started pretty young and just continued. And then at 16 I started doing stand up. But I've only in the last couple of years started doing clown. I went to a clown class in New York with a guy named Ed Malone who's fantastic. And that was boy 2023, 20 late 2022. And and then I went to Gaulier in Paris in 2024. And so it's really only been like 3 years, 3.5 years of me doing clown. But clown is unique. It's frightening. It's different than than any real other theater form that I've done before. And that was, yeah, it really kind of shook me out of a sort of performing lethargy that I had been in.
I think clown must have helped you get over the fear of bombing also.
I don't. Did it help me get over the fear of bombing? I mean, the flop is very scary in clown. Like and it's painful and frightening, and you can't be afraid of it, and you can't hide it. Like the thing that I think is really wonderful about clown is that like you have to be present with all of your feelings, and you can't escape from the crowd. that in stand-up comedy, you have the act and you can fall back on the act. And so if something doesn't go well, you just quickly move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And then you can hold the mic stand, you can look down, you can kind of look up, you can look into the crowd and then look over everybody's head and not connect with them. But in clown, you have to connect with the crowd and you have to be present with your emotions. So, the fantasy in stand-up comedy is that you are egotistically great and smart and you are the leader and you're infallible and you're crushing it and you're like you get to participate in this sort of fantasy about yourself, or at least this is how I was doing it. But the thing with clown is like you can't do that.
Hmm.
It's You're gonna do things and they're gonna suck and you're gonna have to sit there in how much they suck and just be present with it. And in a moment where you're going through the flop, it feels like there's no hope. It feels like, oh man, like I'm the worst performer who's ever fucking lived. And these people are never gonna follow me. I don't know how I'm gonna get out of this. And if you are open to that hitting you and you don't give up on it but are present to it, and then another idea will come to you, another thought will come to you, and you follow that one, and the emotions are there. The audience is with you. Like if you're present to them, like they want to be with you. It's only when you start to hide or run away or get or try to get out of the moment that's when they feel abandoned because you've abandoned them.
That's a beautiful line that when you abandon yourself, you have abandoned the audience.
Yeah,
And talking
it's
about
true.
flop and clown, let's go. Did you have any phase where you were like bombing continuously with your stand up?
Yeah, I mean, have you watched me at all lately on stage? Like this is uh I moved to Chicago in 2015, and where I was previous, I was in Colorado before that. I was in Detroit. I was in Michigan. I was in France before that because I lived in France for a while doing comedy. Um, I've been doing comedy for many years, but when I got to Chicago, the level of comedy, the level of stand up was way better, way higher. And I just bombed constantly because it was like I was writing constantly, I was bombing constantly. I was like, why can I not figure out how to make anybody laugh? And it was like months of that. It was probably like 6 months.
Ah,
And we were doing open mics every night, almost every night. I mean, for 100 days, I got up on stage every night for 109 days in a row. And it was, it was just challenging. It was just rough, but you kind of had to go through it, and then you slowly start finding bits. You start feeling more comfortable. I think when you go through a bomb and it's real bad. I remember one night, the worst night was there was a place in Chicago in on Halstead called Town Hall,
okay.
and it was all comedians. There was like no normal people. It was all comedians. And I got up on stage and started telling jokes, and I don't think I got a single laugh for 5 minutes, like the entire time I was on stage. And there's nothing worse than when you like get to a punchline and then like silence and you like perform the punchline and then you're like, all right, okay. And then you move on to the next one. And it was in front of peers of mine.
Yeah.
And the worst part was I walked outside and I had been doing comedy for, a long time. I was, 28 years old. So I've been doing comedy for like 14 years. And I went outside and I was like, I don't know if comedy's for me. Like, I don't know. Like this bomb was so bad that it like caused me to like, it shattered something inside of me. And I remember there was a comedian named Tim McLaughlin who came outside and he was smoking. And I was like, man, I was just trying to make conversation with him. I was like, man, that was rough. And he goes, yeah, man, I think you should quit comedy. like he said it to me like right away. And as soon as he said it, I was like, I screw this guy. Like Robin Williams has a great quote where he says, somebody asked him, what advice would you give to someone in your life who says that they're going to become a comedian? And he goes, tell them not to do it. He goes, tell them not to do it if they listen to you, it was never for them. Like you should just like there's
Yeah.
better things that they should do. But if they're going to do it, they should not listen to you. And then they'll go do it anyway. And so I kind of was like, yeah, I'm not going to listen to anybody. I'm just going to keep doing this. You have to have an ego in a certain kind of way.
You kind of remind me of Jerry Seinfeld when he also says this regularly, that you have to have an ego if you want to be a stand-up artist.
I mean, he would say that. like like Jerry Seinfeld would say that. He's exactly the guy who would say that. Like Jerry has a huge ego. One time,
Yeah.
I don't know if this story is true, but one time I heard a story about Jerry Seinfeld that he was going to be interviewed, and a guy who was going to interview him drove up in like a beat up old Volkswagen van, and Jerry Seinfeld saw it, and he was like, "Nah, yeah, I'm not going to let you interview me." He was like, "There's no way you're a successful interviewer. Look at your car," and then like went back inside.
But Jerry Seinfeld considered Porsche as trash also. So what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, like he has so many Porsches, man. Like that guy's. I don't know. I've never met Jerry. He attacked a friend of mine in the New York Times once, though. So
I actually interviewed a person. Her name is Maya DiGiorgio, and she said that she was shooting a documentary in 2000, and Jerry kind of told her team to get out because he had to film his documentary, The Comedian. So
yeah,
there are a lot of stories about him.
yeah, exactly. I mean, he dated for many years. He dated a way younger woman. I mean, he was like,
Shoshana, 17 years
yeah,
old. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, look, creatives are always interesting and odd people for all kinds of reasons, but like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't. Jerry would say that it takes a big ego because he has a huge ego.
And yes, those 109 nights, 109 nights that you performed in Chicago are the reason that you're now a regular at the Chicago Laugh Factory.
Um, you know what's funny? They're not. I ended up I had to do a bunch of shows at the open mic and then a bunch of regular shows at the Laugh Factory before they gave me. I mean, I was on shows pretty regularly for a while before I was like, "Hey, can you just add me to like can I get on the website? Like what's going on?" And they were like, "Oh yeah." They acted like it was like, "Oh yeah, totally, we just forgot." And I'm like, "Nah, dude, the problem is I don't know what this is. Somebody once said, I think it was Amy Poehler, that she was like, you have to be a likable person. Like you just have to be like a lot of times what happens in entertainment or what happens in comedy is that like you're a person that people like to hang out with. And I think I just really am not sure. I think people enjoy having me around, but I don't know that I'm a likable person to hang out with.
I think the
Like,
comedians most likely hang out with comedians only.
say that again.
I think comedians most likely hang out with comedians only because they are the only one whose mind could match could resonate.
Yeah, well, we all have the same maladaptive neurodivergence in our brain.
Yeah.
And like one of the things I struggle with when I'm hanging out with normal people rather than comedians is that normal people think things that you say are like serious.
Yeah.
So when you hang out with comics, you can say nonsense. You just say like whatever. Joe Rogan once got him and Brian Callen were on an interview, and like I don't whatever people hate Joe Rogan, but he said this, and it's 100% true, which is he was like, oh, people were getting angry at me and Brian Callen for saying this like nonsense to each other on this episode. But he goes, what normal people don't understand is when two comedians get together, all they do is say the most horrendous stuff to one another to try to get the other one to laugh. And I was like, that's the whole thing. That's it.
Exactly.
That's all you do when you hang out with other comics is you just say nonsense to try to get the other person to laugh. and it's so much fun. But if you take that energy and then go in front of regular people, you'll say stuff and they'll be like, "Whoa," and you're like, "No, no, 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 I didn't mean it." Like,
And I have to tell you that I'm not a comedian myself. I'm more of a researcher, but one of my friend is a comedian. And when we talk with each other, we make jokes about the most horrific things. We make jokes about people close to us have died, and we make jokes about them just to make the other person laugh.
oh yeah, oh yeah, and and I come from a family of that. Like I've said this before, but like, I have my family's got a great sense of humor, and my aunt sadly passed away a few years ago, and I was at her wake, and I was sitting with my uncle, her her widower, and her daughter, my cousin, and all of these other cousins and family members and friends, and we were having a great time. And we were having such a good time that, like, when there was a lull in the conversation, I was like, "Man, you guys, this is great. Like, Aunt Lori should really pass away more often." Like, like like, and everybody burst out laughing. But like that kind of joke is so dark and weird. But like that's the kind of thing that it's how do you take them? A lot of people in front of the wrong audience. You know what I mean? Of normal people, they would be like, "What? That's so messed up that you just said that." Like, but in front of the right audience, the right group of people, that's the best. It was like lightning striking.
So something similar happened to me also. My father passed away, and a week later, that one of my friends called me and said that I really want to come, but my father won't allow me. And I said, "I'm sorry, buddy, I can't relate to you anymore."
That's funny.
Both burst
My
out laughing on that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just funny, man. It is one of the joys of hanging out with comedians. I mean, Jerry even says himself, he's like part of the reason he's got into comedy is just to hang out with other comics.
Yeah. And who did you idolize growing up? As a comic, as a performer, and even as a comic writer?
Yeah. I think the first comedian who I really connected with was Jim Carrey. And I remember watching a lot of Jim Carrey being like, this guy's just so funny. Like he's just a savant. Like anywhere he was, I just thought this is just one of the funniest. I remember staying up very late one night when I was a kid to watch Jim Carrey on Letterman. And I was like, this guy's just amazing. Like I just wanted to be like Jim Carrey so badly. And then I think as I got older, I really loved Chris Rock. Like I loved Bigger and Blacker came out, I think when I was like
94.
14 or say that again.
So no, Bigger and Blacker was 2004 or 94. I don't even remember that.
No, no, no. I think it was 2000. It might have been 99. I'll have to double check, but he came out, or I think it may have been 2000. Anyway, it came out not long before I started doing stand up. And I just remember watching it thinking, this is like the perfect stand up comedy special. Like it's so funny. Like he's so good in it. He's like, he looks sharp. He like stalks the stage like he's like a puma or something. Like he's walking around
The Stomper.
and like, yeah. And like the way, like the how he sounds like people don't talk enough about how Chris Rock's voice sounds on stage. And it has like he has his voice has like a very funny quality to it where he's just, you ain't that thin, your face don't look that good. Like it just, I love it so much, man. So yeah, those guys were big influences. And then I think
And then Chris Rock, I have to say this about Chris Rock because this is one thing I love about him, that he would repeat the same premise three times in three
yeah,
different voice modulation, and it will be funnier every time.
yeah, because and he needs people to get it. Like that's the other is he has like big premises. So he has to get like people, you have to like pound that in. I really also liked Christopher Titus and still do. Like people don't talk enough about Titus, but he had a TV show on Fox News, Fox News, Jesus, Fox Television, which
With
was
you worked with
amazing.
him, right?
Yeah, yeah, I worked with Titus. Yeah, I was very lucky to work with Titus. I mean, he was like one of my idols. Like I was so impressed by him. And he's still, I saw him do his recent, well, not recent, this was a few years ago, but he did a tour called Zero Side Effects, and it was all about the pandemic and in America, and it was so good. Like it was so good. And he just hasn't slowed down. He's been doing it for 30 something years, and the guy is absolutely like a savant. And people don't talk
Mhm.
about him enough. But his ability to storytell, and he also is like fully embodied on stage. Like he prefers to have to talk with his hands, not have a mic, and then
Yeah.
have like a microphone up that he wears.
Yeah.
and and there's something about it, like his ability to access really painful stuff and transmute that into like really funny, really funny bits. Like he's very good at connecting with the crowd. I don't think this is giving anything away, but he has an amazing moment in his special Zero Side Effects where, and I saw him do this live, like his audience is a very unique group of people. Like they are probably, a lot of them are right wing, probably a lot of them are Trump supporters. And he basically um he basically like had them, they are probably people who didn't take the vaccine, right?
Yeah.
And because a lot of them think it's about control. And he has this moment where he points to the guy in the crowd. He's like, he goes, not to put you on the spot, but you didn't take the vaccine, did you? And he goes, no. And he goes, well, why? And he goes, it's about control. And he goes, how old are you? To the guy in the crowd. And he's like, I'm 61. And he goes, are you still working? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, how many years have you been working? And he's like, I've been working for 50 years or something, 45 years. And he goes, are you a millionaire? And the guy goes, no. And he goes, that's control.
Ah.
Like you've been working your entire life and you're not you're not wealthy. Like how is that possible? It's not they don't need the vaccine to control you. But it was such an interesting moment because I was like, dude, this guy like really he gets his audience, he understands how to talk to him, he knows, like he can really see it. Like it was really impressive.
He really sets up the audience for the punchline.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that is like really good comedy.
And since you're bringing your show to the British, and what's your favorite British show or comedian or app? Anything.
I mean, uh I really do like Daniel Sloss, and I really do like who did you mention earlier? Darn it. I'm having such a brain fart.
Hey, Caster.
I do love James A. Caster. I watched a lot of James A. Caster when I was writing this show. Um I mean, he is a similar guy in the sense that he really does know where his audience is at, like almost he almost knows what they're thinking at like any given moment of the show, which is really kind of amazing to watch. And another guy like Chris Rock, where his voice is like a major part of why he's funny. Like I think that if you were to take James Acaster's bits and you were to give them in a Midwestern American accent, like somebody from Nebraska
Yes, Chris
or
Rock.
something, they'd be kind of funny. But like a big part of it is just the way he sounds, isn't it? Like, he just has his total control of his voice, really. Like
Well,
he just,
you really sound like a Caster.
yeah, yeah, right. I love we nicked it. Oh, that was so fun, right? The great heist. Like he's so, I sometimes think he's doing an impression of himself.
Yeah,
Like
and it's very old school British.
yeah. I I also like Stuart Lee. Stuart Lee is another British comic who, I mean, in the States is like not known almost at all. But
Uh,
and in, I would even say in the UK is not given enough lip service, because the guy is really funny and is also very cerebral. Like I really like the fact that he's an intelligent guy, and he's interested in, like I think that there's a lot of comedians who people are like, oh my god, I think that guy's just like, he's such a genius. Like James Acaster, I think is a smart guy for sure.
yeah.
But I also think he's just absurd and like bonkers. And sometimes I think that people mistake absurdity for intelligence. But Stuart Lee is like an actually intelligent guy. Like that's a dude who you could sit down at a dinner table and have an interesting conversation about almost anything. And he could make jokes and it would be funny, but he'd also just have an interesting conversation. Like not that I couldn't do that with James Acaster, but I think you understand the point.
Yeah, I get it.
Like
I get it.
I
And
feel like if I
now
invite James Acaster over for dinner, he's going to be making jokes about all kinds of things in my house. You know what I mean?
he might even throw the chair or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or he'll have dinner on his knees the entire time or something.
Yeah. And do you remember any time you like featured in a show or maybe opened for some big names?
Yeah. I mean, I worked with one of the things that I really liked was I got to open for and feature for Chris Kattan from Saturday Night Live. And I grew up watching Chris Kattan on Saturday Night Live. It's part of the reason I wanted to get into doing improv and was watching him and Will Ferrell. And I mean, like, it's so many, there was like so many bits that he was good in, like Mr. Peepers and especially Mango and the club
Hmm.
guys like at and he I mean he had he had a fantastic career and was such a cool guy and I got to go on tour with him around Texas and was opening for him and featuring for him and that was pretty cool. I mean, and then I think that honestly, aside from Titus, who I already mentioned, I think that was a big one.
Thank you so much for being a part of this, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you, Kishan, dude. I appreciate the time. Yeah, and thanks for being flexible, dude, because I know that we tried to move this around a bit.